Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gargi Chaturvedi, and I'm a research intern at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. It is a matter of great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all to another edition of the ICS Wednesday seminar titled Cross-Strait Relations and Challenges for Taiwan's Indo-Pacific Policy. Cross-strait relations are key to Taiwan's development. Over time, Taiwan's policy has shifted from aiming to recover the mainland to recognizing both sides of the Taiwan Strait as separate political entities, not subordinate to each other. Different governments, especially before and after Taiwan's transition to democracy, have followed varying principles to guide their cross-strait policies. In recent years, the Indo-Pacific strategy led by Japan and the US has become vital for maintaining peace and stability in the region. This is especially important for Taiwan's security as China has become more aggressive about the goal to unify Taiwan with force if necessary. This seminar analyzes how Taiwan's cross-strait policies have evolved and examines the challenges Taiwan faces in shaping its Indo-Pacific policy, as both these policies are closely interlinked. The speaker for today's seminar is Dr. Meichuan Wei. She is an associate professor at the Graduate Institute of Development Studies at National Chengchi University in Taipei. She is also a member of the Gender Equality Committee, Overseas Chinese Affairs Council of the Executive Yuan, and board member of Taiwan Association for Development Studies and Taiwan Association for India Studies. Her research focus is on democracy and democratization in East and South Asia, gender and development, public culture and political development, and social innovation and development. The chair for today's seminar is Dr. Arvind Yelleri. He is an associate professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He's also visiting faculty at the Fudan School of Management, Shanghai, and an honorary fellow at the Institute of Chinese Studies. He has co-edited Tailspin, The Politics of India-China Economic Relations, published by Routledge in 2021, and authored China Inc. Between State Capitalism and Economic Statecraft, published by Pentagon Press in 2021. Before I hand over to the chair, I would like to ask all participants to follow a few housekeeping rules. All participants shall be muted during the seminar. Questions may be posted in the chat box along with your name and affiliation. Alternatively, you may also use the raise your hand option during the interactive session. You shall then be called upon to unmute yourself. Thank you. I now hand over to the chair. Over to you, Dr. Yelleri.
Thank you, Gargi. And at the outset, let me thank Institute of Chinese Studies, Honorary Director, Professor Alkacharya, who has been quite instrumental in planning this seminar. Along with that, let me also thank, with all due respect and with my heightened interest, Professor Wei for accepting this. She was in JNU, she was in India last month, and in October and November overlapping. And we had really interesting sessions. And she choosing the topic about cross-strait relationship and especially keeping the spectrum of Indo-Pacific strategy makes the entire discussion, today's discussion, very interesting. Over a period of time, I have had an opportunity to hear and interact with Professor Wei on different occasions. But what makes this lecture today very important is to learn more about Taiwan's perspective, indigenous perspective, from the point of political theory, historiography, and then bringing it to the contemporary politics. That makes the entire transition of looking at Taiwan and Taiwan's relationship with the mainland quite interesting. As the abstract says, while Taiwan developed different mechanisms, different narratives to co-opt with the situations and try to create its own vortex, create its own magnitude, economically, technologically, and otherwise also culturally distinct from the mainland. But the international relations did not stop putting more challenges in front of Taiwan, whether that is new structures, new institutions, new narratives. That makes the entire the concept of Taiwan's, identity quite challenging. I wouldn't say problematic, because then Taiwan has to re-gear, restructure itself and see, oh, come on, there is Indo-Pacific. Okay, where do we fit now? How do we answer this thing? And while saying that, one has to understand that that underlines that Taiwan cannot be sidelines. Taiwan remains at the center. Any new institutional arrangement, any new restructuring, any new reengineering of narrative, whether that is a cross-oceanic narrative, cross demographic narrative, or cross-political discipline narrative, Taiwan remains the center focus, and every one of us is pushed to understand these dynamics. And with the speakers like Professor, we have an opportunity to understand it from, in a very illuminating way. So I think it's an honor for all of us, and for me also, to chair the session. And let me welcome Professor Wei to help us understand how did Taiwan navigate through these different challenges historiographically, politically, culturally, economically. So over to you, Professor Wei. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Aravind Yellery. Okay, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. It is my great honor and pleasure to have this opportunity to talk about this topic. And I would like to particularly thank Aravind for the invitation, as well as the ICS, and take this opportunity also would like to express once again my gratitude to Aravind for inviting me to visit JNU and stay in India, Delhi, for 2 weeks. And it was a very lovely experience. And I have to say that although my engagement during my visit to JNU actually was very hectic, the schedule was very tight, but I did miss India very much upon my return to Taipei. So I would like to thank Aravind again for inviting me to visit JNU. And for my talk today, I will first provide a brief historical account about the Cross-Strait relations, followed by a brief discussion about the principles of cross-strait policies of different administrations in Taiwan, from Chiang Kai-shek's government onwards to Lai Ching-te's administration now. And after that, I will talk about Taiwan's Indo-Pacific policy, and then end my talk with an analysis or discussion of the challenges to Taiwan's Indo-Pacific policy. Next. Yeah. Next. Yes. Also, this is the outline of my talk today. As you can see, I will talk about the Chinese Civil War at the end of World War II, and then establishment of PRC and the Great Retreat of ROC to Taiwan in 1949, when the PRC was founded on the mainland. And after that, I will move on to talk about the normalization of Sino-American relations and expulsion of ROC from the United Nations in 1971. This is of course, is a huge diplomatic setback of Chiang Kai-shek's ROC on Taiwan, and it also has a very significant impact on the subsequent development of Taiwan or ROC. And then I will talk about the principles of cross-strait policies of different governments in Taiwan, from Chiang Kai-shek's retake the mainland to Tsai Ing-wen's and the Lai Ching-te's. The ROC, Taiwan, and the PRC are not subordinate to each other. And after that, I will talk about Taiwan's Indo-Pacific policy and the challenges to this policy. Next. And this is the map. As you can see, Taiwan is kind of very near to the southeast part of mainland China, and Taiwan Strait is of a highly strategic values, not just for Taiwan, but also for countries in this region as well as the United States. And that is the reason why we can see there is a very heavy involvement of the United States in this region, although the country itself is far away from Asia-Pacific. Next. Okay, so the end of Second World War and the Chinese Civil War. After the Second World War, Japan surrendered and relinquished its control of territory it had taken from China as a result of the defeat of China in Sino-Japanese War in 1895 under the terms of Shimonoseki Treaty, and that is Taiwan. So after that, Taiwan was officially considered occupied by the ROC, Republic of China, which began its ruling on the island of Taiwan with primarily the consent of its ally, the United States and the United Kingdoms. And the picture shows the negotiation of the signing of the treaty between China and Japan. Next. And after Taiwan was returned to China by Japan, the ceremony was held in Taipei. So in the picture, you can see that General Chen Yi on the right was accepting the receipt of General Order No. 1 from the last Japanese Governor General of Taiwan in Taipei City Hall. And the other two pictures showed people in Taiwan celebrating the retrocession of Taiwan on October 25th of 1945. Next one. So the Chinese Civil War was fought between Kuomintang-led government of the ROC and the forces of Chinese Communist Party (CCP), with armed conflict continuing intermittently from August the 1st, 1927 to May the 1st, 1950. And between 1937 and 1945, the armed conflicts between these two parties were on hold. The main reason because they were fighting together against the Japanese invasion. But the civil war resumed when the Japanese defeat appeared to be imminent. And during the period from 1945 to 1949, the CCP actually gained the upper hand in the civil war. And the result of this war was the communist victory and control of mainland China. Yeah, next one. So in 1945, the leaders of the two parties, Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong, met for a series of talks on the formation of a post-war government, and both of them agreed on the importance of democracy, a unified military, and equality for all Chinese political parties. But unfortunately, the truth was tenuous. In spite of repeated efforts by U.S. General George Marshall to broker an agreement between the two, by 1947, the two sides actually were fighting an all-out civil war. And years of mistrust between the two sides thwarted efforts to form a coalition government. And you can see the picture here. I mean, there are Chiang Kai-shek, Jiang Jingguo, Mao Zedong, and Marshall. They were talking about post-war arrangement. Okay, thank you. Next. And in 1949, specifically October the 1st, the Chinese Communist leader Mao Zedong declared the creation of PRC. This, of course, is an important event. And which has a huge impact on the Cross-Strait relations. Next. Years of corruption and mismanagement had eroded popular support for the nationalist government led by Chiang Kai-shek on the mainland. And early in 1950, 1947, 2 years before the PRC was funded, the ROC government actually was already looking to the island province of Taiwan, which is off the coast of Fujian province, as a potential point of retreat. And the picture on the left, as you can see, shows the kind of progress of the CCP on the mainland in terms of the territory it had taken under its control. And in 1950, we can see the whole mainland China was under the control of the CCP. And that's the reason why the KMT was seeking to retreat to the island of Taiwan in 1949. Next. This is what is known as the Great Retreat, because the KMT needed to find a base for its future plan to retake the mainland. So all the pictures showing the retreat of KMT's armies and the families from mainland to Taiwan. Next. And in August of 1949, the Truman administration of the United States published the China White Paper, which explains U.S. policies in the past towards China based on the principle that states only Chinese forces could determine the outcome of their civil war. But for Truman, this step actually failed to protect his administration from charges and criticisms of having lost China, of course, to the hand of Chinese communists. And the unfinished nature of the Communist Revolution and the Chinese Civil War, leaving a broken and exile, and yet still vocal nationalist government and army on Taiwan. And this only heightened the sense among U.S. anti-communists that the outcome of the struggle between the two sides could be reversed. Next. So the outbreak of the Korean War in 1950, which pit the PRC and the US on opposite sides of an international conflict, ended any opportunity for accommodation between the PRC and the US. And Truman's desire to prevent the Korean conflict from spreading south led to the US policy of protecting the Chiang Kai-shek's government on Taiwan. And these are, on the left, these are the four major players in the Korean War. Next. So from June 1949 to June 1950, PLA generals under Mao Zedong undertook intensive battle planning and preparation for what was to become the formative strategic challenge facing China's new communist leadership of Mao Zedong. An unexpected turn of history kept Mao and his generals from putting their Taiwan invasion plan into action. And on June 25th of 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea, and the US President Truman swiftly decided to save South Korea's friendly government while also ordering the US 7th Fleet to prevent a possible Chinese invasion across the Taiwan Strait. Speaking of South Korea, I think we probably cannot avoid mentioning what happened last night and this morning. And as a political scientist studying democratization and democracy, this kind of sudden introduction of martial law in South Korea really kind of strikes many, I think, Democrats and the scholars in democracy and democratization. And our so-called shock is that because democracy in South Korea actually has been regarded as consolidated. So how come something like a sudden implementation of martial law could possibly happen in a country like South Korea is really kind of striking many people. Okay, let's continue with cross-strait relations and Chinese Civil War. Okay, so North Korea invaded South Korea, and the United States decided to protect South Korea as well as Taiwan. Next. And from more than 20 years after the Chinese Revolution of 1949, there were few contacts, limited trade, and no diplomatic relations between the US and South China. Until the 1970s, the United States continued to recognize the ROC located on Taiwan as China's true and only solely legitimate government, and supported that government's holding the Chinese seat in the United Nations. But in 1972, President Nixon traveled to Beijing and met with Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai, and they, due to this, so during their visit, the two governments negotiated the Shanghai Communique, an important step towards normalization of Sino-United States relations after many years of hostility. Next. And this is a rapprochement of the United States with China in 1972. And on the right is the picture of the US-China ping-pong diplomacy. And Henry Kissinger is no doubt a very important player in this decision of ping-pong diplomacy. And this marked a very important stage of Sino-American relations in terms of normalization of the two countries. Okay, next. Okay, so Zhou Enlai and Mao Zedong contemplated the value of but the reason why they wanted to sign this agreement with the United States is because they contemplated the value of an American counterweight to the Soviet Union, concessions on the status of Taiwan, as well as technology transfers from the United States to China. And Nixon also promised to remove the US military presence in Asia. So ping-pong diplomacy was followed by a secret trip to Beijing by Kissinger, and he talked with Zhou Enlai and Mao Zedong and yielded an American promise to remove US forces from Taiwan in return for Chinese support of a negotiated settlement in Vietnam. And the picture shows Zhou Enlai and Kissinger shaking hands. Next. And in 1971, the United Nations voted to recognize Communist China and ousted the nationalist Chinese government of Taiwan, led by Chiang Kai-shek. And the delegation of ROC, the representatives of Chiang Kai-shek, are pictured on the left, leaving the UN Assembly Hall before the vote on a draft resolution that is number 2758 to recognize the representatives of the PRC as the only legitimate representative of all China to the UN. And again, this is a very serious diplomatic setback for ROC, and this also changed the policies of Chiang Kai-shek's government on Taiwan. Next. As far as the political and the legal status of the ROC is concerned, especially after it lost the UN seat as representative of all China, it only enjoys a de facto but not de jure sovereign state, and this status remains until today. And yet, ROC Taiwan, as we all know, has its own, for example, currency and wide accepted passport, armed forces and a constitution with an independently elected leader, president. And internationally, however, there is a controversy on whether the ROC still exists as a state or a defunct state per international law because of the lack of wide diplomatic recognition of ROC Taiwan. And ROC was a founding member of United Nations, but now it has neither official membership nor observer status in the UN's. And recent years, the movement or initiative to appeal to, for example, return of ROC to the UN or join the UN of joining the UN of Taiwan has been a very vibrant activities by some groups in Taiwan. And this all points to the current international status of ROC on Taiwan. And this also kind of explains the reason why, for example, Li Denghui, Chen Shui-bian, and Tsai Ing-wen would want to adopt the so-called Go South and the new southbound policies in order to kind of expand its space in the international society. Next. Okay, and now we are going to talk about the different principles of cross-strait policies of different governments in Taiwan. First, in 1948, when the two sides were still at the Civil War, the National Assembly of the ROC adopted the temporary provisions against the communist rebellion in the midst of the Civil War. So the democratic constitution that was enacted in 1947 was frozen. And during this communist rebellion period, the ROC regarded cross-strait relation as at war. So the KMT saw themselves as the government of all China, temporarily resident in one part of China. And the fundamental mission of the KMT government was to build up strength and retake mainland China by force in the future. And Chiang Kai-shek's son, Jiang Jingguo, succeeded his father in 1975 and reiterated that there were to be no contact, no negotiation, and no compromise with the Chinese communists in response to China's attempt to three direct links with Taiwan. And these are known respectively as the three no's policy and the three linkage policy of Beijing. And three linkages refer to linkages in the fields of postal communication, transportation, and trade between the two sides of Taiwan Strait. Next. But after the PRC implemented economic reform and changed the approach to Taiwan starting from the 1980s, also in response to the veterans movement in Taiwan, the ROC government allowed the nationals to visit their mainland relatives in 1987, and this means kind of opening up to the mainland. So there was the necessity of regulating the cross-strait relations because of this. Next. In 1989, the Ministry of Justice unveiled the provisional bill governing relations between the people of Taiwan area and the mainland area. And this refers to the two regions or areas of one China. But of course, this China is ROC rather than PRC. And in 1991, the temporary provisions were repealed by former President Li Denghui, and the act was passed by the Legislative Yuan in 1992 and commenced at the end of that month. Officially, ending the civil war between the CCP and the KMT. And this is very important for the democratization in Taiwan, because as long as the two sides are regarded as at war, then it will not be possible for Taiwan to fully democratize. And that is the reason why, as the result of the series of constitutional reforms undertaken by Li Dengwei, we see the end of civil war, official ending of civil war between CCP and the KMT. Next. Okay, so regarding the principles of cross-strait policies of different governments and the leaders in Taiwan, the principle is no haste and be patient under two-state theory when Li Denghui was in power. And I think what had attracted a huge attention and discussion is his so-called two-state theory that refers to the relationship between Taiwan and China as spatial state-to-state relations. And this, of course, is not acceptable by Beijing. And the principle is proactive liberalization with effective management in the first term of Chen Shui-bian. He is the first president from the then opposition party to be elected as the president. But in his second term, the principle changed into proactive management with effective liberalization. And the reason is because of the background of China's passing anti-secession law in 2005. So the focus would be on management of the exchanges between the two sides rather than liberalization of the relations. And under the Ma Ying-jeou's administration, the principle is no unification, no independence, and no use of force. Basically, it emphasizes the importance of maintenance of status quo. Next. And because Tsai Ing-wen and Lai Ching-te are both the candidates and presidents of the DPP, so Lai Ching-te actually continues to uphold the principle of cross-strait policy set up by Tsai Ing-wen, and that is to emphasize that the two sides of the Taiwan Strait, that is the ROC and the PRC, are not subordinated to each other. Okay. Next. Okay, so in cross-strait relations, I think 1992 consensus and One China are very important for our discussion and understanding of the relationship between the two sides. And the 92 consensus is a political term referring to the alleged outcome of a meeting in 1992 between two semi-official representatives of ROC and the PRC, and they are Strait Exchange Foundation and Association for Relations Across the Taiwan Straits. But whether the meetings truly resulted in a consensus is disputed, at least in Taiwan, because whilst the KMT understands the consensus as one China, different interpretations. That is, the ROC and the PRC agree that there is only one China, but they disagree about what China means, because for Beijing, it of course is PRC, but for the KMT is ROC. And the CCP's understanding is that there is only one China, of which PRC is the sole legitimate representative of China, and Taiwan is part of China. And this is not acceptable by any major political groups or parties in Taiwan, including the KMT. Next. And what has kind of contributed to a very significant change of the cross-strait relations as well as the policy is the remarks made by Xi Jinping in 2019 on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of message to Taiwan compatriots. And basically, he was calling for the adherence to the 1992 consensus and vigorously opposing Taiwan independence. And the formula emphasized and reiterated by Xi Jinping on that occasion is that Beijing offering Taipei a promise of one country, two systems as a way to accommodate Taiwan's current de facto independence and the different democratic legal system. Next. Okay, so it is against the backdrop of the Cross-Strait relations, as I have discussed previously, that we come to talk about Taiwan's Indo-Pacific policy or strategy. For few countries rely on the future of the Indo-Pacific region for their survival more than Taiwan, and this explains the importance of Indo-Pacific for Taiwan's development as well as existence. And Taiwan's engagement in the Indo-Pacific is to a large extent shaped and channeled by the two main powers in this region, and that is PRC and the US. And for Taiwan, China is an economic partner and a greatest security threat, because China seeks to marginalize Taiwan on the international stage and is at the same time a very strong economic pull for the island. And whereas the US has offered Taiwan ambiguous support and has overall ensured its de facto sovereignty. But in general or overall, Taiwan is caught and shaped by the tensions between the United States and China. And that is the main reason why it has to engage with the Indo-Pacific region for the country's survival and development. Next. So in terms of Taiwan's Indo-Pacific policy, previously, there was Go South policy, and it was upheld by the governments of Li Denghui, Chen Shui-bian, and Ma Ying-jeou. But under Tsai Ing-wen's administration, the policy kind of changed or expanded into New Southbound policy. So building on this Go South policies of previous administrations, former President Tsai Ing-wen launched in 2016, the New Southbound policy directed towards countries of Indo-Pacific region. And this policy highlights the uniqueness of challenges faced by Taiwanese diplomacy due to its ambiguous sovereignty. And it is also regarded as a rather innovative way for Taiwan to seek to engage with the region on a people-to-people-based approach rather than a government-to-government-based approach. This can be regarded as innovative way, but the reality is because it is simply not possible for Taiwan to have a government-to-government-based kind of approach to the exchanges with these countries. And Taiwan's strategy that aims to maintain the status quo and make sure to keep China distant and the US involved also shape the way Taiwan engages with the Indo-Pacific. I'm coming to the end of my talk. Okay, next. And this is what is stated in an article published by the Executive Yuan, the government of Taiwan. It states that to diversify Taiwan's risks and minimize over-dependence on any single market, and that refers to China, although it does not say it here. The Executive Yuan introduced in 2016 the promotion plan for the New Southbound policy to strengthen Taiwan's relations with its neighbors to the south, from South to Southeast Asia to Australia and New Zealand. And the fields that are emphasized in this promotion plan include economic and trade collaboration, talent exchange, resource sharing, and regional connectivity. And these are the fields that have been included, for example, in the cooperation and exchanges between Taiwan and India. Next. And regarding the challenges for Taiwan's Indo-Pacific policy, I think in the case of Southeast Asia, we know that economic and cultural exchanges between Taiwan and Southeast Asia have been going on for many decades. As far as business investment is concerned, Southeast Asia, particularly countries like Vietnam and Thailand, are the preferred destinations when Taiwanese businesses are forced to relocate from mainland China due to the pressure resulting from the competition between China and the US. And yet in this region, China has always played an influence role. Whilst most ASEAN countries rely on China for their economy and on the US for their security, several countries in Southeast Asia have been always much closer to China in general due to shared ideology or interest. For example, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar are good examples. Southeast Asia is an important target of China's One Belt, One Road initiative as well. And this also kind of helps China to penetrate the region or to build the trust and, in a way, reliance of ASEAN countries on the country, on China. And both BRI 1.0 that focuses on grand mega projects to BRI 2.0 that aims to prioritize small and beautiful high quality projects with green energies as its focus are helping or have been helping China to kind of win the hearts of at least the governments of those countries in this region. Next. Okay, in the case of Taiwan and India, compared to Taiwan's relations with Southeast Asia, exchanges between Taiwan and India have not been really facilitated in a fuller scale until the new southbound policy was launched by Tsai Ing-wen. And compared to Southeast Asia, there is also a lack of proper familiarity between the two sides. And for India, for example, semiconductor-related technology and investment is central to its thinking about the strengthening of the bilateral relations between India and Taiwan, as well as what strategic role Taiwan can possibly play when India has to focus on the military confrontation resulting from the border disputes with China is probably another important aspect when India was thinking about the importance of engaging Taiwan. So in general, challenges for Taiwan's Indo-Pacific policy, I think, are primarily whether Taiwan's efforts and the promise to meet primarily the economic interest of countries in the Indo-Pacific region through primarily people-to-people-based approach, whilst at the same time pursuing Taiwan's own economic interests, of course, would be able to ensure stable and friendly policies of these countries towards Taiwan, even when they are facing coercive diplomacy of China. I think these are the major challenges. But of course, there are some minor challenges concerning, for example, whether the allies or countries in the Indo-Pacific region kind of trust our current president, Lai Ching-te, in terms of his attitudes towards Taiwan independence, whether he would do something like Chen Shui-bian had done in his second term, was of course kind of a huge concern of some countries or leaders in the regions, including the United States, but that might be a kind of minor issue. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting presentation. I have a couple of questions, but I think I do not want to exploit that advantage, and I want to just let this audience put up some questions, and maybe Gargi, if they have some questions, there are some questions in the chat box. Please read them out.
Yes, sir. I can see one question from Captain Kamlesh from NMF. He's asking that what are the elements of the UN Resolution 2758 which China appears to be misrepresenting vis-a-vis Taiwan's status? Could you please clarify?
Okay. I think regarding the UN 2758 resolution, basically this resolution just states that Taiwan will be returned to China, but it does not spell specifically out which China. But at that time, it was ROC, of course. So things changed in 1971 when the seat or the representative of China in the United Nations was replaced by PRC. It only states that PRC will replace ROC as the only lawful and legitimate representative of all China in the United Nations and in the world. But it did not really say anything about Taiwan. Okay, and that is the reason why Glacier, a very important security advisor to the American government, as well as an important scholar affiliated with Marshall Foundation think tank, would try to emphasize this. Again, the resolution only states that the representative of all China will be shifted to PRC from the ROC, but it did not say anything about the status of Taiwan. And that is the reason why it has been thought that there is a space for Taiwan to make some maneuver for trying to kind of, to seek an independent international space for ROC Taiwan. Yeah.
Okay, until we get the next questions, let me ask one question. This is with regard to Taiwan and Southeast Asia. You have correctly said that, Southeast Asia is an important part of the entire Indo-Pacific narratives. And Taiwan has been trying very hard to create its own footprint in Southeast Asia. But largely, Southeast Asia has not been moved away from their principal stand of recognizing what mainland wants, and then moving away from mainland. What Southeast Asian countries have been doing is exactly exploiting these tensions between the mainland and Taiwan, rather than taking independent stand. If I can put it that straightforward. For example, if you take Malaysia, right? Malaysia has always been welcoming mainland in terms of finances, in terms of their political endeavors, everything. But when it comes to Taiwan, Malaysia has a soft corner, a civil society which wants to work with Taiwan. I think this is with the other countries in Southeast Asia as well. So taking that as one of the variable, you will see that what Taiwan has developed as an Indo-Pacific strategy is what is presented in terms of opportunities, not that what Taiwan wants to create opportunities. So what are those new things which are beyond new southbound policy, which Taiwan thinks it can twist the present dispensations and make favorable conditions for Taiwan?
You mean beyond?
What I believe is that actually, Taiwan is actually navigating through, as you said correctly, through the tensions and then the various dimensions of power politics between the two major powers. It did not say country, but major powers, that is China and US. But does that mean also that Taiwan wouldn't have navigated through if there wouldn't have been Indo-Pacific? What would have been the other alternative scenario here?
Okay, I think, I mean, it is not possible for Taiwan to avoid this kind of structure of the kind of competition between the two great powers. And we also have to kind of bear in mind that actually the United States has been playing a very significant role in the post-Second World War development of ROC on Taiwan. So what the Go South policy, as well as Taiwan's new southbound policy, aims to achieve actually is through those efforts, say, as you mentioned, kind of try to facilitate exchanges between civil society groups or people and people in Taiwan and those Southeast Asian or South Asian countries in order to create or to build a very strong community between Taiwan and those countries based upon primarily economic exchanges. In other words, central to Taiwan's Go South and New Southbound policy actually is to make Taiwan indispensable economically, if not in other aspects, to countries in Indo-Pacific regions. And semiconductor or chips actually appears to be a very important example here. Okay, in addition to the investment of Taiwanese business in Southeast Asia and gradually in South Asia, for example, India as well, semiconductor technology and capital are important. So in short, I don't know whether we can go beyond New Southbound policy because, I mean, there is not much Taiwan can do in terms of developing other than economic or culture relations between Taiwan and countries in the Indo-Pacific. So basically, that is the option available to Taiwan. And that is also what Taiwan can offer or can negotiate or bargain with our partners in this region. I mean, that is economy, really. So I don't know whether I get your question right, but anyway, that's how I understand what you want to know.
Yes, you have partly answered that, but I'll come to 2.0 question later when I think Rapai sir has a question. Gargi?
Yes, sir. There's a question by Mr. Rapai Malyakal. He's asking, what are your expectations from the incoming Trump administration and his mercantilist policies, overall impact on Taiwan's future?
Okay. I think, I mean, we discussed this issue in this morning's forum on the changing Indo-Pacific geopolitical landscape as well. And the election of Donald Trump or the administration of Trump 2.0 actually is the focus of our discussion this morning. And of course, as we can see from what he has been commented on policies related to, for example, Indo-Pacific strategy or US-EU relations or Ukraine-Russian war. Basically, he kind of wants to keep the United States away from those military confrontations, including Russia-Ukraine war, as well as the conflicts in Gaza Strait between Israel and Hamas or some Palestinian groups. And what has been emphasized in his strategy or policy measures actually is tariff, right? He has determined to use tariff as the major tool for gaining Americans' economic interest. And we all know that economic interest is at the center of his thinking about America and about what his government wants to do. So what can we expect from Donald Trump as far as Taiwan's kind of interest or security is concerned, or as far as the stability in the Taiwan Strait is concerned? I think we have to be more cautious about our reliance on the United States, and a kind of strategic autonomy might have to be thought and considered seriously. In other words, as long as the United States agrees to sell, for example, arms to Taiwan, then we have to try to buy those arms we need for self-defense. If, say, there is a possibility of Chinese invasion in Taiwan, or military confrontation in the Taiwan Strait. And we also have to kind of try to strike a better or proper deal with the Trump administration as far as the trade between Taiwan and United States is concerned. And what we have already agreed to do, of course, is to kind of build a factory in Arizona to produce or to manufacturing chips for the United States primarily. So by doing that, we probably can deal with what Trump wants to do by adopting the measure that kind of focuses on the tool of tariff. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Some people in Taiwan would think that, okay, because, for example, the national security team of Trump's government actually are quite hawkish to China. So as long as they are not friendly or over-friendly with Beijing, then Taiwan does not have to worry too much. So that is one view. But in terms of economic relations or trade with the United States, I think Taiwan should be better prepared for the possible impact of tariff policy by Trump. But I think overall, I personally don't think that the United States' policy towards Taiwan and towards the Taiwan Strait or Cross-Strait relations will see a very kind of drastic change, because the strategic value and interest of Taiwan for the United States remains, no matter who is in the position of United States leader. Okay, so I would not expect too drastic change as far as Americans' policy towards Taiwan is concerned. And I even think that China probably will have to worry more than Taiwan does. Yeah, that's my personal view.
So, Jesse, I want to ask a couple of quick questions. One, you said that the importance of Taiwan for US remains intact, or it will remain the same, right?
Mm.
But why is it that the Taiwan do not understand that the importance, the unit of importance of Taiwan to US is only to use for its nuisance in Indo-Pacific? I mean, to unsettle or to settle and unsettle its interest in the Indo-Pacific, but not constructively help Taiwan. But that is what I think largely the academic literature is also underlining. There is a literature, I think I really gather from some of my discussions with the Taiwanese. There is also rising void and rising mistrust over America, the way it it behaves in Indo-Pacific, especially with regard to Taiwan. So there's a the biggest question mark with regard to America. I definitely agree whether it is Biden or Trump, but when it is Trump, actually it looks more explicitly. It is the Americans who are actually exploiting the Taiwan's position for their own benefit, than Taiwan using America for their own benefit. That's one question. And second question is, uh, do you believe? I mean, what is the larger? Because I think we hear Taiwanese speaking on the forums, but you have been absolutely very careful, using very measured words. Uh, I want to. Can I say that Taiwan is doing a soft hedging? It knows that it should not really confront, or it cannot afford to let the cross-strait relations or tensions in cross-strait relations to go beyond controls, right? And it also wants US to be a part of the cross-strait relationship, but not beyond a limit, right? At the same time, the Taiwan do not want to lose its magnanimity when it comes to Taiwan, China's East Asia affair is concerned, or China's Southeast Asia affair is concerned, or China's South Asia affair is concerned. Same thing is about Taiwan does not want America beyond, going beyond the limit. So do you think that Taiwan is also somewhere, I mean, I'm not sure if this is a correct term of using a soft hedging. It doesn't want an escalation to go beyond limits. It wants escalation, okay, fine, but it wants escalation to, it is called the control convention, in electromagnetics. It's using the control convention to help itself. So what is your quick comment on these two things?
Okay.
One is growing mistrust in American politics. I mean, really has after the Trump 1.0, I know this is being recorded and put on the American server to be seen and watched by everyone. How much is the Trump 2.0 is trustable when it comes to Taiwan matters?
Okay.
So, yeah, little bit of intimidating question. Sorry, but
it's all right. I think the first question basically is about whether there is a kind of rising U.S. skepticism in Taiwan. And my response is yes. Okay, although some people would not agree with me on this point, because quite a lot of them would just say, okay, is the misinformation or political warfare waged by Beijing in order to influence the relationship between Taiwan and the United States. But if we look at what had happened in the past, and that is the ROC actually had been abandoned or betrayed by the United States several times, right? 1971 and 72 was just one of the examples, and it happened as well during the Chinese Civil War. So especially now, people in Taiwan are watching very closely about what the United States would do in Russia-Ukraine war. Okay, if say Trump kind of decided to intervene actively by kind of trying to get two sides, okay, Russia and Ukraine, to sign a deal, peace deal, and yet that peace deal actually is made at the kind of price of the loss of some territory of Ukraine. Then, of course, we in Taiwan would have to be very alerted by this act, because I mean, this might happen when there is a military confrontation between Beijing and the Taipei in the Taiwan Strait. Okay, so in terms of U.S. skepticism, I personally think that exists, and it's mainly because of what happened in the past. It also because of, if Taiwan is so important, okay, for the United States, interest in Asia Pacific, in Indo-Pacific, not least the kind of important role played by Taiwan's semiconductor industry or chip manufacturing industry, then why the United States cannot show more support for Taiwan in terms of what Taiwan wanted and needed. Okay, for example, I think strategic clarity is probably something we can talk about, although it's not possible to happen as far as I see it, because that would provoke Beijing and might result in confrontations in the Taiwan Strait. But get back to your question, yes, I think we have to be very cautious about the United States, although we rely heavily on the United States for the security. And this is true. No one can really deny that. Yeah, because I mean, people in Taiwan do believe that the United States is probably the only country which can lend us support and give us some form of protection when we are attacked by PLA. And maybe Japan would do the same, and South Korea, well, it depends on the situation of the country, really. So it's a very kind of difficult situation facing Taiwan. On the one hand, we really need the United States for our protection, but on the other hand, we are also aware that maybe the United States is not a kind of entirely reliable airline. So that is the first question. And the second question is about whether there is a soft hedging of Taiwan's policy towards cross-strait relations as well as America, right? I don't know whether it can be called hedging, because as I said, we do heavily rely on the United States on many things: economy, security, defense, right? As well as the US support to Taiwan in kind of trying to expand or to kind of fighting for some space in the international society. We have to work together with the United States. And what happened in the South Pacific island nations is probably a good example. You know, if we rely on ourselves alone, I don't think we can successfully try to keep our diplomatic allies as effectively as we would like it to be. So United States is no doubt very significant and important. And I'm not so worried about whether the kind of involvement of the United States in the Taiwan Strait will result in military confrontation in the Taiwan Strait, because I don't think the United States want that to happen. So it would try to kind of restrain its involvement in a proper way or to a proper level, which can avoid any kind of provocation, can refrain from provoking Beijing and resulting in the military action of PLA in the Taiwan Strait. Okay, so that is probably the common understanding between Taiwan and the United States. None of these two countries would want any military conflict to happen in the Taiwan Strait, because in terms of military capacity, there's no comparison between Taiwan and PLA. I know some people in Taiwan would not be happy about hearing this, because I did receive some rather negative and harsh comments when I made this comment on some occasion in some meetings organized by think tanks. But I mean, there is no comparison in terms of the military capacity of Taiwan and China. So there is no way that Taiwan would want any military conflict to happen in the Taiwan Strait. And for the United States, I don't think, especially Trump, he does not want to kind of do anything for other countries like this to sacrifice the lives of American people, soldiers, or to kind of spend the money of the United States for the protection of other countries. So, hedging, I don't know, but if we look at new southbound policy or what has been happening, especially when the kind of when the relationship between China and the United States became tense since 2018, right? Quite a lot of business, Taiwanese business and investment originally based in China or on the mainland China actually have moved out to other countries, primarily Southeast Asia and India. And the trade between Taiwan and China actually has been decreasing. Okay, in other words, the volume, the trade volume across the Taiwan Strait, has kind of decreased. So the share, it kind of how to go that the percentage of the total GDP of Taiwan that is contributed by the Cross-Strait trade actually has been on the decrease as well. So whether this is soft hedging, I don't know. I mean, as what is stated in the new southbound policy, I mean, the policy aims to kind of minimize over dependence on any single market, and that is China, right? And it's working. But of course, thanks to the strategic competition between China and the United States. And so it was under the pressure primarily of the United States that Taiwanese companies and business would have to move out of mainland China, and that would have an impact on the total trade volume across the Taiwan Strait. Hence, kind of reducing the reliance, economic reliance of Taiwan on China. Okay. Yep.
Thank you. Gagi, we have 3 more questions in the chat box.
Right, so there's a question by from Mr. Ramakrishna, who is a research associate at CAPRI. The question is, how did Taiwan's transition towards democracy impact its relations with China, and how did Taiwan's democratization movement influence the leadership's threat perceptions of China? And he's also asking, was there a popular demand from the Taiwanese people in the 80s and 90s for normalization of relations with China?
Okay. Taiwan's democratic transition and its kind of influence or impact on China. I think 1996, I mean, the kind of direct presidential election in 1996 is a very important development in the history of Taiwan's democratization as well as cross-strait relations, because the election, direct election of president of Taiwan has a very significant meaning for cross-strait relations, because that means Taiwan is a kind of sovereign independent state, right, which can select its own national leader. And this is the reason why there was a Taiwan Strait crisis in 1996. I mean, the PLA waged military drills and exercises. Okay, so this is one thing. And another thing is whether it would impact on the political development on the mainland or CCP. I think maybe Tiananmen Square of 1989 could be a point of reference for our thinking about this question. But overall, because of the legacy of different political ideologies, and that is socialism basically is what is the dominant ideology and political value in China, whereas liberalism and capitalism are dominant ideologies in Taiwan. So in terms of the kind of understanding or perception of what democracy is, for Chinese people, they have been educated to think that they have their own understanding and perception of what democracy is. So it is very different from the Western conception of democracy. And democracy in Taiwan is very Western in many ways, right? So I don't think Taiwan's democratization has a huge influence on mainland. Okay, but of course, there are kind of many Chinese students coming to Taiwan to study, either as a degree students or exchange students, and they would have more kind of direct experience of Taiwan's democracy, and they probably would have different views as to what democracy they think is better. But whether they would kind of try to promote or advocate a different vision of democracy that is different from what the CCP or the Chinese leader has envisioned or understood is quite another issue. Okay. And what is the second question? Sorry.
Second part of the question was there popular demand from the Taiwanese people in the 80s and 90s for normalization of relations with China?
Yes, yes. And as I mentioned in my presentation, the veterans movement is one good example because they are separated from their relatives and families on the mainland because of the Cross-Strait situation, right? So when kind of China developed, okay, things because of the economic open and reform policy adopted by Deng Xiaoping in late 1970s, we see economic development on the mainland, and the society has become more open and liberal as well. So people on Taiwan did kind of want to normalize the cross-strait relations. But the idea of normalization in this regard is can be understood differently. Of course, for supporters of, for example, Taiwan independence, they also want normalization, right? Because for them, normalization means that Taiwan is Taiwan and China is China. But for those who support unification of two sides of Taiwan Strait, the normalization for them refers primarily the kind of proper interaction and exchanges between the two sides of Taiwan Strait without any unnecessary limitations or restrictions. In other words, they hope that they can travel freely between the two sides of Taiwan Strait. They don't have to worry about any punishment or control or limitation on their plan to travel between the two sides. And that is, I think, what is understood as normalization of cross-strait relations in Taiwan. Yes, 80s and 90s. Yeah.
And there's another follow-up question from Mr. Rapai. If crunch comes, US will protect its interests first. Indo-Pacific is far from the US mainland. What are your comments to that?
You mean the United States?
Yes, if crunch comes, US will protect its interests first, and Indo-Pacific is very far from the US mainland. So what are your comments on that?
I personally don't think that there will be a drastic change in the Indo-Pacific strategy of the United States. And the reason being that even Trump cannot kind of ignore the kind of strategic importance of Taiwan, especially its strategic location in the first island chain. And on top of that, the importance of Taiwan's semiconductor for the economy of the United States is also important. So protecting Taiwan from the invasion or attack from mainland China or China actually is also very important for the interest of the United States, right? And the major concern of Trump is to kind of protect interest of the United States, especially economic interest, right? So that is the major reason why even Trump cannot really ignore the importance of Taiwan as well as Indo-Pacific strategy, because the two actually are tied to each other. Okay, so I don't know. There might be some changes might be some changes of Donald Trump's policy in the Indo-Pacific, but overall, I would not expect drastic changes in the United States Indo-Pacific strategy. As I say, mainly because Taiwan's interest is intertwined with American interest in many ways in terms of strategic as well as economic. So, yeah, I mean, the involvement of United States in this region of the world will remain even the president is Donald Trump. Yeah.
Dr. Yellery, I don't think there are any further questions in the chat box. So, over to you.
Okay. I want to ask one last question as a roundup. Just want to know how many of literature by the Taiwanese scholars is coming out on a regular way with regard to Indo-Pacific and cross-strait relationships. As you said correctly, the scholarship in Taiwan is mostly overwhelmed with the Western thinking, Western perspectives, Western narratives, Western ideologies, concepts as such. So, how much is the native, the organic debate within Taiwan to augment, not to augment even, but to rally the reason of Taiwan as such, the indigenous reason as such? How much of literature is coming out there?
Very few.
Okay.
Very little. I think it's mainly because, okay, the kind of academia in Taiwan has been hugely and heavily influenced by the United States, because most of the professors or scholars actually are trained in the United States or North America in general, and very few of us are trained, like myself, in Europe. And if say what do we mean by indigenous intellectual or knowledge system, refer to knowledge produced by scholars trained in Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
But their professors and teachers are trained in the United States, right? So
Right.
the kind of theoretical thinking or this kind of intellectual tradition actually will pass on from those professors trained in the United States or in the West to their students. So it would be very difficult for the so-called indigenous thinking about cross-strait relations and kind of Taiwan's foreign policies or external relations to be very different from what has been dominated by the Western theories. But we also have to be very honest that, I mean, how people are thinking about these issues are closely tied to their experience of living on this island, right? So although we would expect more critical thinking and examination of, for example, the relationship between Taiwan and United States and our relationship with Beijing or Cross-Strait relation in general, but as long as Beijing's attitude towards Taiwan, like the attitude demonstrated primarily by, say, Xi Jinping after 2019, that is more aggressive. And also what we have seen, what happened in Hong Kong after the national security law was implemented there, that basically would affect negatively Taiwanese people's trust or confidence on Beijing, even when even when the formula of one country and two systems, which would not really be adequate for Taiwan, really, because Taiwan is not like Hong Kong, okay, is a de facto sovereign state, right? So we already expected a more kind of flexible arrangement if the two sides agree to unite, okay, reunite or unite, then we already expected a more flexible formula for regulating the relationship between Beijing and Taipei, or China and Taiwan. Now even one country, two systems is not possible. Then that would again kind of affect how Taiwanese people think about Beijing, and that would, of course, impact on how they think about cross-strait relations, and that would then push Taiwan towards the United States, even there is U.S. skepticism. So I would say it all depends upon how Beijing kind of treats Taiwan, really, but how Beijing would treat Taiwan would depend upon the relationship between the United States and Taiwan. So it's a very difficult situation, and that is the reason why it's not possible for Taiwan to be like Singapore, to adopt a kind of full-fledged hedging policy between the two great powers in the region. Is unlikely for Taiwan to be like Singapore. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yes. I find a lot of corollaries there, because if you look at India, the way there are a lot of public icons, coming up in the discussions of foreign policy. The way Indians are discussing about India's foreign policy, knowledge systems, the strategies, the strategic autonomy vis-a-vis US. Though we go, actually, we are clever. We go US, we take fellowships, come back, but we speak for the country. We are more innovative. I'm not speaking for all the everybody, but I think most of these scholarship, which is actually developing in India, have been quite critical about US. So that point of argument from you was very important for all of us. And I think, that's a reason, I think, why Taiwanese institutions, Taiwanese government, institutions like tech should cooperate with us more. And I know that in Yuan, executive Yuan, there is a debate going on about the budgets, budget cuts. So I still think that you should not cut budgets on India.
They would not. I mean, I would be very honest with you. I have heard from some friends in I know I should not kind of be too specific about this point.
Yeah, you
but
can
anyway,
just dotted
I
row.
have heard that, I mean, there is a concern or worry as to whether, say, the Lai government would kind of shift the focus of his foreign policy, and not to invest too much on, for example, new southbound policy. And that if that is the case, then of course the budget that would be allocated for facilitating bilateral relations between Taiwan and India probably would be affected negatively. But so far so good, because just heard about that, but I mean, nothing happens yet. Okay.
Yes, so I think that was, I think, a brilliant point where we curved the entire question into, and we connected that into the existing dispensation, academic dispensation, how will be affected, if that decision is taken in executive UN. So thank you, Jesse. Thank you for coming, agreeing, and giving this fantastic talk.
Thank you for the invitation.
I learned a lot. All of us learned a lot. I think this was not just what you came and presented, but I think we touched on various other aspects throughout the discussion. And I think, thank you so much. This is recorded, and I think this will be put on YouTube for the further dispensation of the public domains. Thank you so much. Thank you. Over to you, Gargi. Thank you so much.
All best. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Gargi. Thank you. And thank you for the questions. And I hope I respond to all your questions properly. And if you're not happy about my responses, you can email me and I can have a further discussion with you through emails. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Yellery. With this, we come to the end of today's seminar. We thank Dr. Mei-Chuan Wei and Dr. Arvind Yellery for gracing today's seminar with their presence and for giving us their precious time. The video of today's discussion will be available on the ICS YouTube channel. We would like to invite you to the upcoming Wednesday seminar scheduled for 11th of December, 2024. Further information regarding the event can be found on the ICS website. You may also subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. Thank you for joining us today, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.